The next project that I had, I saw on Tara Brown's site, and Tara did, I'll show you her card. Beautiful cards here. This is her triple gatefold card. This is, it's got a flap on the inside that opens so that you can have a message on the inside of the lid. You can have a message here, or photos or embellishments. You can do embellishments on each of the flaps on the inside. She always does a beautiful job decorating hers with lovely embellishments, vintage style. This is the outside of her card. I love the way that looks. Now, she also provided a cutting file for hers, but she used, for the border, she used a punch and just attached her little ribbon that she made using a punch. But I thought it would be fun to try to make it and make the cut without using a punch, because I don't have that punch. So I thought I'd just show you how to do something similar. One thing she did that I haven't done yet on mine is she added a belly band that we talked about last week, about adding to the card that I made. This just slides up, and her file, she posted this also in WPC format. It includes the design for the belly band. So I posted a link to where you can get that at her site in the chat. So if you want to get her version of the file, you can go ahead and get that. So what I did was make something similar. It's broken down into two parts. It has the middle section is the card, and it overlaps with this middle section, so that this frame here will be glued onto this frame up here. And then I made some different embellishments. So I thought I'd show you how I did this, and then you can add any embellishments, or you can add the kind of border that you want. That's really the purpose of this demo, is to show you how you can take designs that are in the gallery and make the cut, and use them, edit them, change them, make them do what you want them to do. So the first thing I'm going to do to start this card is click on the Bezier Draw tool. I'm going to set my snap position to 1/4 inch because it's easier to draw that way. I'll start on the left and click where I want to start. It's going to be 6 inches tall. If you want this to be a A2 size card, you'd probably want to start at 5.5 instead. Left click at 2.5 inches, and then we're going to go up to 6 3/4 inches. Left click, then over to 11 1/4, left click, straight down, left click, and all the way to the left, and left click. So now we have our first piece. Changes to green so we can see it. Now we can add the score lines. I didn't make this all the way up to the top, I meant to, but I can change that. I'm going to just left click with the node editing tool and arrow up like we talked about. Now this line looks like it curves, so I'm going to right click and convert to lines so it goes straight. Okay, so now I'm ready to add the score lines. Now score lines I want to have on a separate layer in case I decide I want to change those to dashed or leave them solid for use with my scoring tool. And I add a new layer for my scoring lines. So I'm going to again click on the Bezier Draw tool, and I'm still using the snapping, and the score lines go at 2 1/4 inches. They're not going to go perfectly up to the line because of snapping, so I'm going to right click at the end of the line. The next one goes at 4.5, As you can see where you are up here on the ruler. So left click, right click, and then I need another one at 6 3/4, which is at the top of my little slanted line there, and right click, and there's my score lines, and that's my basic card. Now I need to have 2 of these because this is one side of the card and this is the back of the card. So I'm going to select all and hold the Control Shift and drag. Then I'm going to mirror this. Click on the second icon from the left on the bottom, and that gives us a mirror image. So this part of the card is going to be glued up here when we're done cutting it. But for now, I'm going to leave it down here. And so that we have that little flap, I'll make this one the one that opens. Either one can. To make that little opening, I click not on the gallery, but on the basic shapes. I'll double click a square. Excuse me. I'm going to make this 3 by 5. With a green lock icon showing, and then press enter. Now I have a little problem. I have a hard time centering it. So what I'm going to do is use Control and Shift and drag, and I'm just going to drag a square, a rectangle that's the size of this, and I'm going to turn off my snapping now. I'm going to make it the same size as my card, which is 4 1/4 inches, and is 4 1/2 inches tall, 4.5 or 4.5 inches wide, and 6 inches tall. Press enter so that it's in position, and then I'm going to drag this over here, select both, and type S to stack them. So I know that this, I don't need this anymore, but this is perfectly in the center of this part of the card. And now I'm going to just arrow down so that now it's lined up with the bottom. And I'm going to get rid of the, with the node editing tool, just select the top line and delete it, and the bottom line and delete it, so that I have just these lines that are going to serve as my cut lines for the window that's going to open up kind of like a door. I'm going to hold Shift and click the card and join those so that it doesn't get moved around. Now I can draw a score line at the top here. It won't go all the way to the dots, but I'll just add a new layer so I'm not drawing it on the same layer. Left click. I don't want the red circle. Left click and right so that it's not very straight. I really need to have snapping on. So I'm going to turn on my snapping. And I'll hide this. Can't see it very well, but left click and right click, and then now that I can see it, I can move it over. Take my snapping off and arrow it over. And I'll make that a score line style. And this one I'm going to send to the top by clicking smaller, the two green icons, then right click and move layer to the bottom so that I can get to these score lines. And I'm going to just get rid of that square there. I'm going to select all the score lines here, and I'll click on the thumbnail of each of those score lines and send them all to the same layer. Trash the empty layers and make them all score lines. Now we have the basic card, and that's kind of what I just label it basic, so that if I want to come back, looks like I'm missing a line here. If I want to come back and add anything to it or change it, then I can. I'm going to just, no, that's okay. We've got 3 score lines down here, and we've got 3 score lines up here. So if you ever need to see your lines, you can go over to the right side of the screen and select Fill Outline or just Outline to see your lines. You can make the card any color you want. I like to add a little color so that if I want to see it in contrast, then I can see kind of what it's going to look like. Now, once this is saved in this format, as I call that basic card, so I've got here. Now what I'm going to do with this one is show you how to change the edge so that you can use an eyelet border that is in the gallery. I just did a search here for eyelet. When I click on search, there's an eyelet edge that I'd like, so I'm just going to download that, and it comes right in here. And we'll rotate it around using the rotate 90-degree tool, 4th icon on the bottom from the left, so I can see it a little. Now if I want to make this a little smaller, I can. What I'd like to do is have 3 sections of my lace for each panel as it folds. I'll show you over here. You see that the lace, when I first made it, I neglected to notice that I had score lines in here and it was folding, and I didn't want my lace design to be folded in the middle of this design. So I had to resize my lace so that it would fit. So I found, first of all, that I only needed 3 pieces of this. So I click on the node editing tool and delete to get rid of what I don't need over there. And I can click somewhere in here to add a node there, and that allows me to select just this part of the line and delete it. Now I can select it and splits the 5th icon from the left on the bottom, and get rid of those pieces there. Now what I want to do is make it shorter. I'm going to double click here, and I'll just delete the bottom of that. So I have a piece that I can use. I need to multiply it 3 times, but I need to make sure that it's the right size before I duplicate it. I need it to be a width of 2.5245. And I'll put the gold lock icon on, 2.5245. If you don't get it right, you can always resize it later. So what I want to do is I want to duplicate that. I'm going to duplicate it with 3 columns with a slight overlap. -01 should do it. Maybe I'll make it a -02 and apply, so that these are overlapping, and it should help. I can connect those lines if I want to weld them together, or I could try welding without connecting, but weld doesn't work with open paths. It's not very straight. The other thing that I can do is use this node editing tool just to connect them. Right here, left click, right click, and join to closest node, but then it makes a funny thing here. So I think the most efficient way to do this would just be to close in one and duplicate it. So edit, duplicate, and apply. Now I can weld, and I've got a piece that should work. It should be the right size. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. What I want to do is click on it a couple times so that I get the rotation handles. I'm going to drag this curved arrow until I get it at an angle, and I want to have the angle the same as the angle of the card. So I'm just going to move it close so that I can get the angle just right, same as the line here. Now you notice at the top, if I were to weld it right to the top of the edge, it would be too high. So I'm going to use my arrow key until the top of that lace is even with the top of the card here, right here, the peak of the lace. And I will move it over a little bit. I want the left corner down here to line up, but I also want this to be long enough to fit. So this little piece should line up with this line, and this little piece should line up with this line if it's perfect. Sometimes it doesn't get exactly perfect, but close enough. And once I have it in a position where I want it to be, then I'm going to start my editing. First thing I don't need now is this line that I made, and I don't need this other long line, and all I need to do is to connect these. So I'm going to get rid of this line. I left click and delete. Then I'm going to zoom in really close here and double click on this line right on the edge where the edge of the card would be, so that I can now left click here, right click, and join to closest node with a line. But I need to get rid of, actually what I'll just do, just drag it up. And then on the other end, here I can also see if my points are lining up very well. Looks like I could stand and move it a little. But I'm going to left click here to get rid of that line. And now this line, I'm going to hide my score lines since I don't want to mess with them. Left click here, right click and join the closest node with a line. Then if it's not a real straight line, I can left click and just move it over here. So now I can click on that with my selection arrow, split, and I want to get rid of that little line there. It's not letting me. I'll split this. There it is. So now I can join all these. I've got all of my, I'm going to join here. I've got all my score lines hidden. So I could do the same thing on the bottom one, but why reinvent the wheel? So I'm going to select all. I deleted the bottom one. Hold Control Shift, drag, and flip. You can position everything precisely by changing the X to 0 and the Y to 6. Enter. If you're using 5 inches, it doesn't have the... One thing that I didn't do is I forgot to show my score lines. So I'm going to do that again. I have score lines there. Select all, Control A, Control Shift drag, mirror. Now I don't need a window in both of these, so here I'm going to just left click on my node editing, left click on the line and delete, left click and delete, left click and delete. So now I have my finished card.